Europe's leaders, the politicians, the bankers and the bureaucrats seem locked in near permanent session on trying to find a way out of the continent's debt crisis. The rhetoric rolls from their lips. We hear expressions such as greatest challenge, most dangerous phase, spinning out of control, and so on. The uncertainty destabilizes the markets and frustrates forward planning and business. Welcome to Agenda with George Friedman, here to join the discussion on Europe. George, first a simple question. Who's actually in charge there?
Reality is in charge. Statesmen, politicians, policymakers, they're rarely in charge. They like to act as if they are. But the reality that's in charge here is that the European Union was poorly conceived. It was an institution that was designed to function very effectively in times of prosperity, which it fortunately had in its first 2 decades, but wasn't built to handle crisis. It has a decision-making structure that's very difficult to manage, and more important, the real power is in the hands of the nation states, not in the hands of the EU, and therefore these nation states are making decisions based on their own interest, the interest of their politicians, the interest of their citizens. And so the answer of who's in charge here is that the EU was created so that no one be in charge here. So even more than most situations, it's one that's inherently chaotic.
George, people are already saying that the current package under discussion is too small. That's 1,000 billion euros, which I think is about 1.35 trillion US, and that it needs to be increased, and the Germans won't be happy about that, and nor will the banks.
Well, it clearly is drifting on. And the problem is this. The Greeks have voted most of the austerity measures they were supposed to. That doesn't mean they're going to enforce it. The cost for Greece of enforcing those measures would be overwhelming. It would mean instability in Greece, political chaos, and so they're not going to do that. So what we have here is a wink and a nod. The wink by the Germans saying, okay, you do austerity and we'll give you money. The nod is basically from the Greeks, okay, we will accept the money, but we're not going to be really executing the austerity. So the real thing to look at here now is not all the statements and all the votes. It's what is the Greek government going to do? But the Greek point of view is they're not bailing out Greece. They're bailing out the German and European banks that the Greeks owe money to. The money doesn't stay with them, with the Greeks. It goes to the Germans. And like any bankrupt, be it a major corporation, an American airline, an individual, they're not looking at how they got into the situation. They're looking at what happens next. What the Europeans are asking of each other is a level of austerity and control that they don't have the ability to enforce. And the Germans don't have the ability to enforce Greek laws, and that's the problem.
Another tangential point. There are many in Europe who are arguing that this isn't the time for austerity. What is needed is growth and reform, major reform.
You have 2 issues on the table. One is the macroeconomic issue that the United States, for example, or even China, are experiencing. Is it better to balance the budget? Is it more damaging if you balance the budget for growth? Do you incur greater deficits? These are all discussions that nation states have. The problem the Europeans have is they can't have that discussion because they haven't built those institutions to manage things. In the United States, in the end, the stimulus package, if it comes out, in the jobs package, if it comes out, is going to be managed from Washington. There are institutions to do it, and it's enforceable across the table. You don't have that in Europe. In Europe, you're having an other discussion. And that discussion is, how can we save Europe's banks? And the second discussion that they're having is, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? And very frankly, Europe doesn't have the ability to control what the constituent states do. Some of those states can't live under the euro. Other states aren't living under the euro and are not sure they want to continue living within the framework that they're living. You know, it's interesting. People keep saying that the Germans are so powerful. I see it more that they are quite weak. I mean, they're quite weak in two senses. First, defaults and stuff are going to hit them harder than perhaps other people. And secondly, they have far less control over the situation than they would like to have. In the end, they're the ones in the headlights. They're the ones who don't know quite what to do, and they're the ones who are prepared to accept wink and nods from Greece.
And then there are the banks. And that reminds me of a quote by the famous economist John Maynard Keynes, who said that if you owe the bank £100, then you're in trouble. But if you owe the bank $1 million, then they're in trouble. Well, they're in trouble now. There's really no easy way out.
Well, I mean, there is a way out in the sense that the governments can subsidize them, as they did in the United States with the TARP and the follow-on subsidies. That takes care of the problem of the banks. But where are you going to get the money? And how are you going to assure that the wave of defaults doesn't just surge higher and higher? And the basic problem here is that the Germans, the Northern Europeans, have the cash. The Southern Europeans have the debt. And therefore, the Southern Europeans are in a much more powerful position than Northern Europeans. You're in a very weak position in relation to your creditors before you borrow the money. After you borrow the money, they're the ones in a weak position. And so I read Europe in a way very differently than others, in the sense that certainly the Germans are in a healthier financial position, but they have far more to lose from defaults, I think, than the other countries. In the end, you have an institution, moreover, that requires, and a set of European institutions that requires near unanimity in order to get anything done. You have a large number of countries, and we were just having a discussion about Slovakian politics and whether the Slovaks in the end are going to vote for a loan package through the banking system. And what becomes apparent is that there's something quite mad when the future of the European banking system and of many of the nation states is in the hands of Slovakian politicians and what they're going to do, not because Slovakia is particularly funny or anything like that. It's simply because it's a small country, and with the rules of Europe of unanimity, just about any country, including Malta now, may be a problem.
So what's the way out of this?
Well, I don't think there's any way out of this within the context of the European Union. The European Union creates three realities that are unsupportable. The first is a single currency that is designed to manage both the German economy and the Greek economy, which obviously is impossible to do. Second, a free trade zone in which the world's second largest exporter, Germany, is able to move its goods into any country that wants to buy it, and therefore essentially, outcompete the locals. And finally, you have a massive bureaucracy in Brussels, which tries to control and micromanage so much of the European economy and really doesn't have the ability to do so wisely. Now, what the Germans are trying to do is rescue all of this. And the problem is the more they rescue all of this, the deeper the problem gets. Of course, they don't quite know how to go in any other direction, but it's the rescue itself that's the problem, because it links together countries in a single fate that have totally different realities. The reality of Greece and the reality of Germany have nothing to do with one another, and trying to manage them not only by these institutions, but through unanimity, where German-Greek relations are going to be dependent on Slovakia's vote, is sort of a recipe for disaster, and they're having it.
Final question. Do we see the collapse of the eurozone, and then what happens?
Well, what Europe used to have was a series of countries, and these countries had their own currency. They managed their own economy. They borrowed money in their own currency, or if they wouldn't be lent money in their own currency, they borrowed money in some other country's currency based on that. However they did it for themselves, and they suffered their fate, and it wasn't necessary that the entire continental-wide system collapse. The problem you have is that there's no way for the euro to collapse. It won't collapse. There has to be an orderly regression, and the ideology of the European elite is so committed to the idea of European integration They have not yet coped with the fact that it was European integration that helped create this problem. They believe that European integration or greater integration is the solution. So long as that ideology stands opposed to the realities that have been created, there really is no hope but further deepening of crisis. I don't know at what point European elites say this didn't work, and I don't know at what point they simply lose control and new political parties emerge that are anti-Europeanist. But clearly the issue is not so much collapse. It'll stay there. It is how do you manage your way out of the crisis you've created?
Well, I think one thing is certain, there'll be a lot more rhetoric. George Friedman, thank you very much for joining Agenda this week, and until the next time, goodbye.